Hello and welcome to another remote edition of Currently in Quincy. I'm Joe Catalano, and on today's program we get an update from Quincy Chamber of Commerce President Tim Cahill on how Quincy businesses are doing under the phase 2 of reopening. First, though, we check out the news for you. Currently in Quincy, there are 1,266 cases of coronavirus confirmed in the city. There have been 1,071 recoveries. The death toll stands at 130. That is unchanged for the past 4 days. There are currently 13 active cases of coronavirus in the city, and 52 cases have been referred for treatment. Statewide, the case total is now just over 108,000. The MBTA says it hopes to break ground on a new bus maintenance facility at the former Lowe's Home Improvement Store on the Bergen Parkway in Quincy in 2 years and have that facility open in about 4 years. During a virtual community meeting last week, Bus Modernization Director Scott Hamway outlined the plans to tear down the existing building and put up a larger facility that will service 120 buses. Hamway acknowledged that a plan to create an access off of Columbia Street may create some traffic issues.
In terms of pedestrian access, I mean, our experience being out on the site today is that there are pedestrians. I don't know if they're coming from your block or if they're coming from farther north. There are pedestrians that are coming down Penn and then cutting either behind or in front of the Lowe's, kind of on the Lowe's property, to the MBTA, presumably to the MBTA station, since there's nothing open at Lowe's right now. So, we think that that pedestrian movement would then use this new connection to Bergen and continue on to Quincy Adams along Bergen Parkway. So I don't know that it would create a significant increase or decrease in foot traffic. Perhaps there'll be some MBTA employees that would access the site on foot down your street, but it would be, I don't know any reason why it would be a different volume than the number that might have accessed the Lowe's on foot on your street, either as employees or customers. For vehicle traffic, that's something we just need to work with the city on, because if we didn't do anything other than build this roadway extension and didn't manage the use of it, then I'm sure there would be an increase in at least some traffic using your street to get to Bergen Parkway or coming from Bergen Parkway. So we know that we need to work with you, work with Caniff, work with Sullivan, work with the city of Quincy to figure out the best way to kind of manage this roadway so that it's just for authorized vehicles only and it doesn't result in additional traffic on your street. I know there are some cars that come down your street today that end up coming down and realizing it's a dead end and they have to kind of make a U-turn and go back out. So I know there's some traffic that comes down there. That type of thing would likely happen, even in a world where we manage the access perfectly. But it's a problem we know we need to solve. We just haven't got the answer yet, and we need to have more conversation.
Now, the T is currently leasing that property and hopes to purchase it soon. The new facility would replace the 100-year-old bus garage on Hancock Street that the T says is inadequate for today's buses. The city has expressed an interest in buying the old facility and creating an indoor sports complex. The third of 4 virtual community meetings on race relations, policing, and social justice in Quincy will be held tomorrow. City councilors Nina Liang, Ann Mahoney, Brian Palmucci, and Brad Crowell have been conducting these listening sessions to talk about issues of inequality, injustice, and reform specific to Quincy. Liang says that she feels Quincy is in a good place, but says there's always room for improvement.
I certainly don't think we're immune to it. I don't think that there is this fictitious shield around the city where we're immune to some of these things that we're seeing in other major cities and towns. And I say cities and towns because even though we have a small town feel, we are a major city. We're close to 100,000 people. We're, after the census, maybe going to be like the 6th largest city in the state. I mean, we're not a small town by any means. We're a large city. And I look at some of these other large cities where some of these things are happening, and it's awful. And I just think I'm like, that hasn't happened here yet, and I say just because I don't want to create these blanket statements, but it hasn't happened. And I don't think it's because, again, we are somehow immune to it, that we have this force field around the city of Quincy where it just, on its own by happenstance doesn't happen. I think it happens because of good leadership. I think it happens because there are conversations that happen within the police department. I have conversations with Chief Keenan almost daily since all of this has been happening. And he continues to make it a priority to say that it all goes into the training of these officers. It goes into having open dialogue with these officers.
Tomorrow's 4 p.m. meeting will focus on communities of color and the LGBTQ community in Quincy in recognition of the last day of Pride Month. The final meeting will be held on July 8th at 4 p.m., and the meetings are being held via Zoom. A Dorchester man's been charged with breaking into homes in Quincy, Milton, and Brookline. 36-year-old Trayon Mayers allegedly broke into homes on Hamilton Avenue in North Quincy last Thursday morning. He was also charged with breaking into houses in Milton and Brookline recently. Quincy police say Mayers broke into a Hamilton Avenue home while a resident was inside. He reportedly fled in a white Jeep. Stopped by state police in Milton. Officers say they recovered jewelry and other items that were stolen from the homes. Mayers faces breaking and entering and motor vehicle charges. Friday's fatal pedestrian accident in Quincy remains under investigation. 80-year-old Julie Fisher of Quincy was struck and killed as she crossed Southern Artery at South Streets. The 73-year-old Quincy man who was driving the car stopped at the scene and is cooperating. Police say Fisher was not in a crosswalk. The cause of Saturday's house fire in Wollaston is still under investigation. Flames heavily damaged the two-family home at 20 Janet Road. One man escaped safely. However, several pets perished in that blaze. A longtime Quincy police officer, Dan Minton, has retired. Minton's last day of work last Wednesday, where he decided to dress up in the style that was popular when he first became a police officer 40 years ago. Minton has worked the past 36 years for the Quincy Police Department, retiring as a lieutenant and the department's crime prevention officer. He's best known for driving McGruff, the crime dog, in the crime prevention Ford Mustang, and for patrolling on his bicycle around Quincy Center. But Minton is also credited with creating self-defense classes for women, community blood drives, safety fairs, and the car seat installation program. Minton hit the mandatory retirement age of 65, but says he'll still be very active in the community. Coming up, we check in with Quincy Chamber of Commerce President Tim Cahill next.
The year 2020 will certainly be a memorable one, for better or worse. While it seems the COVID-19 pandemic has brought the world to a standstill, life does go on. Whether you're working from home, trying to buy groceries, or keeping the kids entertained, life in Quincy continues, just in a different fashion. As life continues, it needs to be documented. In order to document and preserve life during the pandemic, the City of Quincy, the Thomas Crane Public Library, Quincy 400, and Quincy Access Television have partnered to form Quincy COVID Memories, a project to gather, document, and share stories and experiences of people living everyday life during the pandemic. We're asking you to share stories, photos, videos, and more that best represent your experiences during this unprecedented time. Your submission can be simple, but say a lot. Like this photo of a husband, a frontline worker, leaving for work at 5:30 a.m. Asked if he might step back during the time, he rejected the idea and said, someone's got to do it. Or this photo of a family out for a walk, just with added protection of face masks. Or this video of a family celebrating the 89th birthday of a loved one. These submissions tell the story of life during the pandemic. Help add to the story with your daily life. Visit www.quincyculturalmemory.com to submit your story today.
Checking back in with Tim Cahill, president of the Quincy Chamber of Commerce, for an update on how Quincy businesses are faring now that we're in part B of phase 2. Hey, Tim, good to see you.
Good to see you too, Joe. It's kind of hard to keep track of all the phases and numbers, and I just want to everyone get back to work. But I guess it goes slowly, but at least we're making progress.
Yeah, actually, it does seem we're making quite a bit of progress, both here in Quincy and across the state, numbers-wise, at least in terms of infection rates and hospitalizations. Everything is looking good.
Yeah, I mean, we got hit hard. I think the third hardest state in the entire country in terms of people that we lost and infections and everything, but our healthcare system held up. And I think part of the fact that we get hit hard early means that maybe we'll get hit less hard later, as the reverse is sort of happening in other states. Those that didn't get hit hard are now seeing, rises in cases. The good news is, though, that the cases seem to be less severe, and the hospitals are prepared. And actually, I think more prepared now than they were 3 months ago. Not just with equipment, but knowing sort of how to treat people safely and get them back on their feet. So I'm encouraged, even though the numbers seem to have spiked nationally. I don't think there's any way around that. You can't shut down the entire economy forever. And you can't keep people cooped up forever, because eventually they're going to go out and they're going to pass germs, because that's what we humans do. We pass germs back and forth with the idea that our bodies figure out ways to sort of protect us from them if we stay healthy and everything. So I don't see this as a reason to go back into hermetically sealed containment. And I don't want to see that. I actually want to see us get back to business, because although we're seeing an uptick, we still have a long way to go.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about the current business climate in the city specifically, and how folks are dealing with it.
They're dealing well. I mean, I've got great respect for entrepreneurs in what they face on a daily basis, and what people don't see. What they face, even in good times. So I have learned to respect and love these people even more as they sort of pick themselves off the floor and figure out how to get back to making a profit, because that's the key aspect of being in business for yourself. It doesn't make any sense to work 80 hours or 100 hours a week if you can't pay your bills and you can't pay yourself. So these businesses are figuring it out, starting with outdoor eating. The restaurant industry just jumped into it. Now with indoor and outdoor, they're jumping back inside and outside, and I think that's going to make a big difference. It's a rolling effect that we only found out on Saturday, so not everyone was ready on Monday, not everyone will be ready this week, but it's a good sign. The restaurant industry was probably the first to close, and now they're one of the first to reopen, so that's a good sign that they're dealing and facing the challenges head on. And again, same thing with barbershops, and now with spas and nail salons and small retail. They're getting back, which is good. The one thing that's missing here in Quincy, which we notice, is workers. Employees, white collar workers, the people that are all working from home. Stop and Shop building is empty. Quincy Mutual building is empty. City Hall now is getting back to work, but it was empty for a long time. So President's Place is, for all intents and purposes, empty. We need to get people back to work safely so that we can get foot traffic back, so some of these small businesses that depend on foot traffic can start to build their business back. And that goes for a small optometrist, dentist, the smaller buildings that rely on people living and working here in Quincy Center getting back. Even people who live here and work in Boston, to walk to the T station is a big improvement over what we've seen. So there's still a long way to go, but I'm very encouraged by the first couple of weeks. We just got to keep the progress moving forward, not backwards.
Sorry, a statistic earlier this week from the Massachusetts Restaurant Association, something like 20% of restaurants will not reopen at all. Do you think that's the same in Quincy?
I haven't seen that in Quincy yet. I think that probably 20% maybe businesses in general, small businesses in general, you know, street front businesses. There's a lot of new restaurants in Quincy, which I think helps. These guys and gals are new, and they're at the beginning of their careers as opposed to at the end. We've got a lot of chain restaurants as well that, again, are better capitalized, some franchises that I think, again, will survive. I don't see it happening in Quincy. I mean, the people who don't make it are the ones who just are burned out, have seen one too many recessions, and just said, you know what, it's time to retire or sell the business or something like that. So I don't see it. I do see it nationally and maybe locally in Boston, but I don't see it in Quincy. I don't see any restaurants that closed that haven't reopened, even for takeout, in the general business vicinity of Quincy Square, Wollaston, and Norfolk Downs. So now the big question is, a year from now, where are we going to go? Because it's a lag, it's a struggle, and it's difficult. You'll never get the business back that you lost, but you have to move forward. And I think that's what I see most of our businesses moving forward, figuring out. They took the time, some of them took time during the shutdown to revamp their businesses, to revitalize it, rehab their businesses. We still have some new restaurants planning to open in Quincy Center. And as far as I understand, they're still planning to open, which is great news. There's still development going on downtown. There's buildings being torn down this week that are going to make way for the new General's Bridge and the connection to Clyburn Street. And the Fox Rock project, the commercial part of the Fox Rock project on the opposite side of Quincy Center is, the buildings were just torn down, and that project is moving forward. So I'm encouraged that that business didn't stop. It just really slowed down, then picked up again, and now is picking up even more. So I'm cautiously optimistic, and again, I think I see this reopening as an opportunity for a lot of businesses in Quincy. I think we might be able to pick up some businesses that maybe will shut down in Boston because of the high cost, the high rents, and the high regulation. Our city's been great. Our mayor's been great. City Hall's been great. All of the inspectional and regulators have been fantastic to work with. They've understood that safety has to be balanced with opportunity, and they have not come down heavily on businesses. They're allowing them to figure it out, and trusting them to make sure that they put their customers first, which businesses have to do or they don't survive. So I'm very encouraged, and I think we'll be a more attractive place coming forward because we've got the sort of the best parts of the city without the overbearing parts of the city like Boston. And I don't think Boston's really handled it as well as Quincy has in the reopening phase too. So we're going to be out recruiting businesses and restaurants and small shops from Boston, at least I am, because I think there's an opportunity to show them that Quincy's a better place to do business.
How much of a help do you think it was that the city provided the rental assistance for hospitality workers, the small business grant program? How much did that really help these folks get through this time?
I think it was huge. I really do. I know for a fact that the hospitality program was a huge relief to people because I got the letters and the emails and the notes and the calls. It's kept them in their apartments. And it also kept their landlord solvent. And this turned out to be 3 months. We expected it to be, a couple of weeks back in March. And it turned out to be 3 months of, rental assistance, April, May, and June. So it was a tremendous help. I've heard anecdotally from the businesses that have benefited from the small business grant that it was a huge boost to them. And the timing was perfect on the part of the mayor and the planning department because the program was put together and then the money was dispersed right around the time of reopening. So businesses got between $2,000 and $10,000 to help them, again, pay their rents, maybe buy some supplies, and no strings attached, so they could kind of do what they needed to do to get it reopened. Between the two programs, almost $4 million was spent. QCAP also had a program for non-hospitality businesses. We had our hospitality business in the city's small business grant. $4 million was pumped back into the economy to allow people to pay their rents, pay their staff. And that's on top of what the federal government put in place with the payroll protection plan and small business loan pool for SBA. So I think government, in terms of its willingness and ability to support businesses, have been really, really good. I can speak more specifically towards the local process, which was easy, clean, not bureaucratic at all, and the money got out quickly. So hats off to the mayor and the city for stepping up, but equally for stepping up in ways that help businesses quietly, which is allowing, the process of getting outdoor seating in restaurants was amazing. It happened in a day. Sometimes it happened in a conversation. It was done. I'm still hearing horror stories in Somerville and Cambridge and Boston where they're trying to get some of these restaurants approved for opening. It happened very quickly. The mayor's office meant closing streets down, turning parking lots into seats, sidewalks. It really was, as someone in the business who represents the business community, I couldn't be more proud of my city for stepping up and making sure that they weren't roadblocks in the way, but they were, there was assistance and help. So those steps have really, I think, jump-started Quincy. And again, sends a message to businesses all around us that we can, you can do business in Quincy. And we have a brewer. Widowmaker Brewery is part of our chamber, but they're not part of our city. They're actually located in Braintree. Mm-hmm. And the owner, Ryan Lavery, called me one day saying he wanted to see if we could help him open up a beer garden at the Adams Inn. They did it last year on occasion. They wanted to really push it out. They had talked to the town of Braintree. They talked to the city of Quincy, and Quincy approved it again immediately. So our Braintree Brewery, which is part of our Quincy chamber, now has a beer garden at the Adams Inn Wednesday through Saturdays, all throughout the summer. And they're joined by one of our up-and-coming new businesses, Pearl and Lime, which is a new restaurant opening up in Quincy Center, and the Township, which is a restaurant that's been open for a couple of years. So they're doing the food, the Adams Inn pub is doing the alcohol, and Widowmaker's doing the beer, and the beer garden has gotten off to a great start tonight. This week, there'll be 4 nights, and weather permitting, it will take place all throughout the summer and into September. So that's just an example. A Braintree business was treated better in Quincy than they were in Braintree. And I think it speaks volumes of the way the city just stepped up to try to help. And again, that not only helped the business, the brewery, it helped 2 restaurants in Quincy set up shop. It helped the pub at the Adams Pub, and it helped the hotel, sort of make money on their business. So it has a ripple effect that I think certainly amplifies the money that was spent by the city. And the beauty of the contributions by the city is it's all basically being paid for by the federal government. So it's not coming out of the residential taxpayer base. The Affordable Housing Trust Fund comes from developers, and it's being reimbursed. Most of it's being reimbursed by the federal government. And the small business grants came from CDBG money that was where the strings were loosened so the city could actually put them to use quickly, which in usual cases, it takes months, if not years, to get that money to work. In this case, it took weeks, if not days.
The key, as you mentioned, will be customers coming back. And that, I think there's a story in the Ledger recently about some folks still kind of hesitant, feeling a little bit uneasy just because of the health concerns. So how do you think it'll be a slow process getting back to quote unquote normal?
Well, everyone's different. I do think, and my kids taught me this term called FOMO, which is fear of missing out. And it's a term that the millennials all use and everything. I think people will start to fear missing out when they see rooftop restaurants and beer gardens and sidewalk restaurants and people sort of getting back to normal life. I think people miss that. I know I did, and I'm not a particularly social guy. I don't go out that much, but I think we like to, my kids did, my children, I know that people really miss the social interaction. So I think there's risk in everything we do, Just driving to a restaurant is risky. Walking across the street can be risky. So you have to be cognizant of that risk. If you're not a healthy person, if you've got some health concerns, I think you should stay away. If you're sick, you should definitely stay away. You've got a temperature, even if it's no matter what it is, stay away. But if you're feeling good, you're feeling healthy, you're feeling a little bit like I need to get around some people, you want some activity, there's no reason not to go out, especially here in Quincy. And, the pandemic, it did touch a lot of families, but generally it was mostly contained to folks who already had some health issues, seniors who are at nursing homes and things like that. So overall, I think people are even if they have been impacted by COVID, even if they've gotten it, they've recovered, and now it's time to get out. So it will be a little bit slow, but again, I think people will when people see the first wave go in, they'll say, and come back out safe and sound and healthy, they'll say, okay, it's time to go in. So I think you'll see that when there's a vaccine. I think you'll see people run to it and want to be first in line, and you'll have other people say, let me see how it goes before I jump in. So there are always risk takers. That's what I love about entrepreneurs. They tend to be risk takers, whereas many people would just be like, I don't want to take that kind of risk. I don't want to go that far out on the limb. I don't want to owe the bank money. I don't want to work 100 hours a week for maybe a chance to succeed. And then there are people that just take the risk, and that's what we love about America. I think in general, Americans want to get back to normal life, want to get back to work, want to get back to play, want to get back to seeing their grandchildren and their grandparents and stuff. So it will happen quicker than it unhappened, meaning it won't take us 3 months to get back to back to business. And then once the schools open in the fall, in September, which we're now planning to have that, then I think you're going to see, people go back to work because now there's a place for their kids to go to school, and life return to somewhat normal. Not completely as it was, but somewhat normal.
What do you think, Tim, that, business owners should learn from this whole experience, and what changes should they make, because of it, to prepare themselves better in the future?
I don't know if there's a lesson, because it was so unusual, so different from what we've faced in the past. There was so much media hype about it that I think that in some cases it overwhelmed our senses. So I'd like to see the media, present company excluded, of course, be more responsible in terms of how they, promote or report things. I understand that if it bleeds, it leads, and all those terms about the media that, trying to bring eyeballs, you have the internet and everything. But I'd like to see the media be more responsible in terms of representing the whole story, not just part of it. Again, overall, we live with risks every day. The flu kills tens and sometimes hundreds of thousands in a given year. I think we'll be more aware of that. I know I will be getting a flu shot more regularly than I did in the past because I'm more aware of it. I think people are more aware of hygiene and how important it is. You go into a restaurant, if it's not clean, turn around and go out. Because if it's not clean, your chances of maybe getting sick are heightened. But overall, I think the vast majority of these businesses, whether they be nail salons, hospital, restaurants, hotels, their job is to make sure customers feel comfortable. So they get it already, and they understand that that's of prime importance. It'll be even more important going forward. I think there's probably going to be some uncomfortableness interacting. I know that I walk out of the way of people now when I'm out walking, I'm going the street. I don't want people to feel uncomfortable around me, and I want to respect their space. So I think you might see a little bit more of that, sort of respecting people's intimate spaces. Not less handshakes, certainly fewer hugs, which hopefully we'll get back to that. I don't want to see that go away forever, and I don't think it will. Because again, Americans are very adaptable, and we don't like being told what to do. Unlike folks in other countries, we don't follow orders as completely as we're supposed to. which is why we are here in the first place and why Quincy is such an important place, because our ancestors didn't follow the orders that the British told them to follow. So, you know, it's why it's such a great country. Even with all its faults, it's a great country, and why I believe fully that we'll get back to business. Not normal. I don't want to say we don't know what normal is, but we'll get back to business sooner rather than later.
What does the future hold for the rest of the year there at the Quincy Chamber of Commerce in terms of getting back to business and having events?
Well, we have our own challenges. If you had asked me, I think you did ask me this question back in April. I wasn't quite sure of the answer. We've come out of this, I think, stronger than we went into this. We've found ourselves being able to do things that we couldn't do before. The first time, for those people who have a good memory, that first Zoom I had with you was pretty awful on my part. Not that this one's great, but, you know, we're figuring it out as we go. So we've become more digital. We just got off a run of about, I think there was about 25 events. We had digital events over the last 2.5 months, between a morning breakfast that we had online, the lunchtime events that we had online, town halls that really filled the gap. But our plan is to now mix in the digital sort of connections that we have with our members directly with our traditional events going into the fall. So we'll look at after hours networking events. Now that the restaurants are opened up again, we'll look to have a golf tournament in the fall. Our annual meeting, which was postponed in April, will be scheduled in November. Real, not virtual, but real. You know, again, we'll see how it goes, but our plan is to sort of take what we learned and to how to directly connect with people at their offices, in their workspace, even at their homes, with our more traditional, let's get out and network kind of things. Because you can't replicate that online as much as you try. A Zoom meeting or a Teams meeting or a GoToMeeting, you know, any of those things are great, but they're not the same as interacting with someone one-on-one, you know, having a cocktail and just sort of talking naturally. Really brings people, I think, more business and more of a connection than online does. So I'm not ready to toss that out and try to do this. So we have also increased our contact. We did, you know, we already commented on, we just did a huge program to get people rent checks, brought in and put out over $1 million in 3 months to folks that we didn't have a connection with before that we do now, especially restaurants and landlords as well. So we're going to try to build on that, build on the Mayor's Small Business Program, which we were involved in, although we didn't run it, to try to get to, I think our goal now is to, the connections that we made over the last 3 months to help businesses survive, either those who are in the chamber or those who had nothing to do with the chamber. Our job is to try to bring them all together and say, we're much stronger as a group, as a big group, than we are as a small group. And we've got really good relationships with City Hall that can be beneficial, not antagonistic. And that's how I've always tried to run the chamber since I've been here. And it's served us well because the city has been gracious and supportive and really gone out of its way to make sure that the business community feels welcomed here in Quincy. And that will fill up these shops on Hancock Street that are empty now and replace some of the businesses that don't survive and bring new people to our city to support the businesses and the buildings that are going to continue to go up here. So I am very optimistic. And again, I wouldn't have said that. I wasn't very optimistic in April and even almost into May, but things really turned around. We figured it out. I got a lot of support from my board. I got a great staff that, again, turned on a dime and figured out all this technology very quickly to become proficient at it. And we'll continue to do that. So instead of just having our quarterly breakfast, we'll intersperse the quarterly breakfast with our morning brew. So on Friday mornings, if you can't make a breakfast, and you don't want to pay for a breakfast, you could just tune in and watch what we think will be compelling content. And that's the key for us, is to continue to get the content so that it's something that people will take the time to watch and listen to. So it's been a learning experience, which is how you have to run your business. You constantly have to learn and reevaluate it. I do think that the chamber model will be challenged raising money and getting sponsorships and doing things. Like the whole nonprofit industry is going to be challenged, and like the for-profit, you'll see some go out of business, you'll see some consolidations, and you'll see some people flourish. So I go back to my handshakes days often because they were part of me, the part that taught me that you have to be resilient. You have to figure things out. Nobody's going to cry for you. Nobody's going to feel sorry for you if you fail. You just have to figure it out yourself. And people just want to be served. You serve them well, you serve them right, you give them a good product for a good price, they'll keep coming back. And that's the lesson that we have to continue to remember as we move forward in this new world that we live in.
Yeah. Are you able, Tim, to help businesses with the Small Business Administration program? I've heard some horror stories from some businesses that are having a lot of trouble applying for those assistance programs.
Yeah, I mean, it was a challenge. And again, there was a lot of criticism to the SBA, but I think the challenge that was thrown at them is that they generally are giving out thousands of loans a month, and then they're asked to give out millions of loans a month, right, and get the paperwork and the process through. And they were asked to do it in 2 weeks from when Congress passed the law. And there were many, as there always are, laws are passed in Congress where nobody explains what's supposed to happen. They just say, here's the money, get it out. And then as soon as you get it out, it's to the wrong people, it's not to the right people. So we had Bob Nelson, who was the Massachusetts chair of the regional director of the SBA here in Massachusetts, on to one of our town hall meetings last week. And he explained how the system is improved dramatically and how the application process has been shortened and has been helped, and volunteered his own cell phone, his own email to people. And we forget sometimes that each state has its own local representatives of SBA, and they are the ones that we should reach out to, just like we reach out to our local bankers here. So it was a horror show at the beginning, no questions asked, but it got better as time went on. And I think the payroll protection plan, the improvements that were made by Congress recently, will go a long way to allowing people to write those off. So they will be considered grants, not loans, which is why it was so popular.
Right.
And I think they learned a lot from, I wouldn't say from us necessarily specifically, but from the smaller organizations, city government, chambers of commerce, of how to get money to people in a way that they really needed it as quickly as possible. So we worked together. I mean, I said this to Bob, because I read multiple articles when he was coming on last week. And it's funny how the horror stories were at the top of every article. And then if you read to the end, you would read some really glowing reports about how the SBA helped, saved, kept businesses from going under, saved employees and everything. So it's a mixed bag. People like to complain more than they like to give praise. We all know that. But I do think the combined, support of the agencies within government stepped up to support business as much as they possibly could. And again, the businesses that I represent, I think the business community in general is not necessarily a political organization. They're not politically focused. They're focused on business, and they either want to be left alone or they want to be supported when it's needed. But they're not asking for anything. They're going to pay their taxes. They support a lot to they give back a lot to the community in terms of taxes, and they also give back a lot to the community in terms of contributions. I mean, Dan Quirk was one of our most successful businesses, just put money into a field house at the track at, Faxon Field over here in Quincy Center. Dan does so much for people in the city, unasked often. So, and that's a big undertaking. It's a new building, it's bathrooms, and because one of the things that was interesting about this shutdown is that track probably got more activity during the shutdown than it's ever gotten. People walking, people working out, people seeing it as an oasis. And now there's going to be a facility there, a bathroom facility plus a concession stand plus coaches room, so it can become a more full service facility, which I think is great. So folks like that make Quincy really a special place, and I think it helped us get through this, I would argue, better than any similar sized city not only in Massachusetts, but in America. And I don't make that lightly, but I've just seen it. I've seen it, and I've witnessed it, and I've read about the stories in other cities and elected officials who don't seem to realize we're all on the same team, that we need to be on the local level on the same team. That wasn't an issue here in Quincy. So I'm proud. I'm proud. Even, going back to the protest that was held here in Quincy Center, seems like months ago, but it was only a few weeks ago. Went off without a hitch. The police department, city government, and the residents of the city really got together to express their concern, to express their protest of what happened, but to come together and to leave the city unblemished afterwards. Maybe wiser, maybe more aware of what's going on, but unblemished in terms of violence, in terms of damage or anything like that. So we keep our fingers crossed and knock wood everywhere we can that our great new statues of John Hancock and John Adams remain untouched, because they were true patriots who, I think, and you can go back and criticize pretty much everybody if you want to. Those two are tough to criticize in terms of how they stood fast for all Americans back before all Americans were treated equally. And I think, again, that says something about our city that we're proud of, and should say something to people going forward that not all of history, in fact, most of history is not bad, but there are some bad parts. But we need to sort of, we can't whitewash it away. And we need to also embrace those parts that were great. And those leaders who maybe were not that popular in their day, but became, stalwarts, because they stood up for what was right, not what was popular. And the Adamses are a perfect example of that. And someone that I become more proud of every day when I look back at some folks that we venerate, some people that have statues up in other parts of the country that probably don't deserve them and probably didn't earn them during their lifetime. These folks here did. And that's why it's so exciting to be so close to them. And I walked by the John Hancock statue yesterday and just really looked closely at the Declaration of Independence, which was signed by him in his hand, and I thought it was pretty cool. And that's what I look to get through these tough times.
Great to talk to you, Tim. And anything else you'd like to leave with folks today?
No, except that we're doing well, and I think people should be positive as we go through the summer and enjoy this summer, because we suffer through bad winters here. We suffered through a pretty tough spring, both, environmentally, weather-wise, and work-wise and business-wise. It was really difficult. And now that the summer's here, I think people should try to enjoy themselves and get back to normal living and support our local businesses as much as they possibly can.
Mm-hmm. Good to catch up with you, and hopefully we can do it in person next time.
We absolutely will. Looking forward to that day, Joe. I'm looking at the library out my window here, and I can't wait for it to open. All right?
Sounds good. Thanks again.
Thank you. Take care.
Special thanks to Tim Cahill for joining us today. Thank you to our crew working remotely from home, and thank you for watching. Don't forget to participate in the Quincy COVID Memories Project, please, by submitting your videos, your photos, your art, essays, or other experiences during the pandemic here in Quincy. Just go to quincyculturalmemory.com, or you can send your submissions to the Thomas Crane Library. Attention, local history, 40 Washington Street, Quincy, 02169. And also, please visit our newly redesigned website, qatv.org. You will find all of our programming, news and information. We have video on demand and now live streaming. For all of us here at Quincy Access Television, I'm Joe Catalano. Please stay safe.